Hey everybody, welcome back to Word Balloon. If you enjoy the videos here, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the Word Balloon YouTube channel, and of course, if you enjoy the audios and the videos, you can subscribe to my Patreon page, patreon.com/wordballoon. Welcome back. It's episode 2 of season 1 of Harley Quinn, and I'm welcoming back Patrick Schumacker to Word Balloon to talk about, I think, my favorite episode of season 1. And that's the episode that eventually leads to the Penguin's nephew's bar mitzvah. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Joshua Cobblepot. But first we start with Harley. I guess it's a coffee clutch moment with the Legion of Doom with Scarecrow and Bane. And by the way, man, between the coffee mugs and the T-shirts that appear on this show, I certainly hope there's merch going on. And caffeine is my reckoning. Yes,
I know.
On Bane's mug. I think
this would have been a perfect time for me to just raise up my Bane coffee mug. They do exist. The DC shop, which unfortunately I think is not shipping right now or taking orders because of coronavirus.
Sure.
They sell the Caffeine is My Reckoning, and they sell one for Ivy is like Go Green, or like Humans Make Great Fertilizer. I forget.
That's what it is. Absolutely, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And of course you got to get the Ivy T-shirt for a tree hugger.
That's right.
Well, but those are great. And I also wonder if they're ever going to make little figures, and I could totally see them like sitting around a coffee table, and with Bane with his little mug and Harley with her.
I know. I do want to do that. Like they get the like Legion of Doom boardroom playset where everyone has a chair except Bane.
I was going to blow up that chair. I love who's playing Bane?
James Adomian voices Bane, and he's brilliant, and he does so much improv. Adomian is hysterical. He does stand up. He's an actor. He's been getting a lot of press for. He does a spot on Bernie Sanders impression.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And like he's met Bernie, like they've shot stuff together. Like it's dead on Bernie Sanders impression. But he's been touring the country with that act and I think he was down at Comic-Con last year with I'm going to butcher his last name, but Anthony Adamanovic, who does the Trump impression, and they did sort of a debate style thing that like ended with them like making out on stage. It was like it was insane, but oh my god, James is so funny. It's just like his like we knew we wanted to do kind of a riff on Tom Hardy.
Sure.
We knew James was insanely good at impressions, and just funny. So that was like a no-brainer when he sent in his tape, and then Bane makes his first appearance in episode 2 of Harley Quinn.
It's great, man. No, and then he and Scarecrow having that conversation about the breakup, and then of course Joker coming and being a bit angry, and I broke up with her. Let's be clear about that. And then you get I love these local Gotham TV shows, starting with Good Morning Gotham, and then Howie Mandel is hosting Good Morning Gotham. That's hilarious. And was that because there's other celebrities that show up as we talk about further episodes and stuff. But obviously how is he a DC fan? Is he how much of a comic book fan is he in terms of getting him for this?
I think he knew he was friendly with Dean Lorey, one of our co-showrunners, and I think that was the connection.
Cool.
He knew our casting directors as well, Ruth and Robert, and so it was. I think it ended up just being a phone call, but yeah, we. I need a very brave wardrobe assistant when we get him out of the. Out of the bomb vest that Joker stuck him in. I think that was a Howie improv. Dean Lorey directed all the voices in the early episodes, along with Charlie Adler, who directed Kaylee specifically in all of the voice records. And then I think toward the end of season 1, as Dean moved on to other projects, and I started directing the voice record then on out. with Charlie still doing Kaylee's portion of it. But yeah, I think the story is as simple as how he just thought the script was funny. Knew Dean. It was a quick in and out kind of thing. Yeah.
No, it's a great cameo, absolutely. And then, of course, Ivy decides that she's going to make a stand and, show her stuff at what she thinks is a Legion of Doom party. And instead, she walks in. And also, again, ironic timing with the buzz about Tiger King in Netflix. And I realized that season 1, when it aired on DC Universe, certainly that wasn't in the zeitgeist. But I think for the sci-fi audience, I wonder how many people are going to go, oh, that's fantastic. Look at Charlie walked in with a tiger. That's
they
fantastic.
Really turned that animation around fast.
Exactly, like South Park guys reacting to stuff 5 days after Elian Gonzalez and things like that in the past. Absolutely, man.
We got to go back and change it from a zebra to a tiger before it airs on Sci-Fi. Just overdubbing everybody's voice. It's just like, what am I going to do with this tiger?
Exactly, like Letterman when they used to drop in David. Clearly that it wasn't part of the original dialogue.
I did not think of Tiger King, but I'm glad you made that association, and I hope that we do a 10th of Tiger King's ratings.
Hear, hear. First of all, the idea of, Oswald Cobblepot being Jewish and having his nephew's bar mitzvah. I love that. I am a Greek man that grew up in a predominantly Jewish neighborhood. I went to many more bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs than I did any confirmation parties as a kid. And you guys nail that fantastic tweener. Today I'm a man. Yeah, right. And it's the kids all thinking, all right, this is our chance, man. We're going to dance. We're going to dance with some girls. This is a big moment for us and stuff. And, yeah, exactly. And, of course, poor Harley and Ivy now realizing they're walking in on a bar mitzvah.
Yeah, we have a decent amount of Jewish writers on the staff, and everybody just thought it was funny, and so they were like, "What is the weird, ironic twist of Harley? If Harley is trying to make an impression with the Legion of Doom by sort of crashing whatever heist she thinks she's crashing." Or like meeting of the minds, she thinks she's crashing as her coming out party. What is like the sort of rich irony? Oh, well, how about like a kid's coming out party? Well, okay, let's make it a bar mitzvah. And then, of course, like a significant portion of the writing staff had stories about their bar mitzvah or their bat mitzvah, and that we were able to. We watched a lot of bat mitzvah videos from one of our writers, Jordan Weiss, who went on to create Dollface, which is airing on Hulu and got picked up for a second season. She is very young and like had all like readily available all of this footage from her bat mitzvah, which looked extravagant, I have to say.
They are very expensive. Yes, indeed. Yes. They are like weddings. Absolutely.
Yeah. It just felt like a no-brainer at that point, and we're like, okay, like canonically, sure, Penguin's Jewish, why not? Yeah, and then I know there were some people that in hindsight didn't like it because of that. Really? And yeah, I know like Justin got a little bit of flack online, and I thought he handled very well and honestly, which was a lot of it was just like. We never, again, like there are a lot of Jewish writers on the staff. I grew up Catholic, but lapsed Catholic here. And I'm like, totally, this is a blind spot for me.
Okay.
but there was a little bit of flack with it, and like representing Penguin as a villain as a Jewish person. And then also having like the party at the Gotham Mint. But like those connections were so not made when we were in the writer's room. It's, it was like, well, what's like a place that Harley thinks there's going to be like a criminal heist. Okay, well, it's going to be at a mint. They're going to steal the money plates or whatever. And then, after the fact, we were all like, okay, we can see why people might be upset about this. But,
well, I'll be interested in when the masses see it that, again, the comparatively small DC Universe streaming audience, and not everyone has the streaming app to the sci-fi audience. Again, I'm not Jewish, but like I said, I attended them, and certainly all my friends are of good humor and saw it as a fun thing. And also just the idea too that Joshua Cobblepot is becoming a man, And the Penguin is like, well, if you're a man of this family, you're going to be a criminal. And so you got this kind of phony heist that, is the intent of the party and stuff. And I love that. And the improv actors, the security guards and stuff. And, poor Harley trying to think that she's really kind of making this mastermind move. And then there's Joshua Bucks and again, a comedic improv troupe pretending to be security guards that she beat the crap out of and everything.
Yeah. So, I mean, this episode really, it took a while. It was one of the few episodes that we had. We got very lucky being like a first season show. Generally shows, end up blowing up a lot of episodes, right? And just going back to page one rewrites. We got very lucky with this show, and maybe a part of it was a function of it being serialized and having kind of mapped out the whole season ahead of time. But this was one of the episodes that ended up kind of having to go through a lot of like larger iterations. And Jane Becker was the writer, contributed a giant amount to what the finished product is, but there were still a lot of like the B story. We ended up kind of changing completely over time. Part of that was a function of as we progress. Like when I say B story, it's more about like there are moments in this episode where we try to bring Joker back into it a little bit because it's very, the breakup's very fresh. Joker obviously catches wind from Bane that Harley's like moving on, striking out on her own for real. It rankles Joker, but then we're like, we love like Bane coming in with the hot gas. And like he's at the party and he calls up the Joker. He's like, "You're never going to guess who just walked in here." He's got a tiger, pretty cool. And like the Joker's like trying to rebuild his factory or his lair.
And he's having zoning issues, which I love. What do you mean I'd have to get a permit for a trap door? It's secret. The government's got to know I've got a trap door. It defeats the purpose.
And he's pointing the gun at all the contractors, just like, "Put your booties on. You're wearing black soles." And like. He's like OCD, right? So like,
well, but also it is this great like what would be normal problems for a supervillain lair, and the fact, and it was something we didn't talk about at the end of episode 1 that Harley trashes the lair, and so now it needs to be repaired, and it's a public area. What are you talking about zoning and stuff? This is on a pier. I mean, it's so great because it does call back classic tropes of in the comics where a Joker's lair would be, like in The Killing Joke, it's in an abandoned amusement park.
Exactly.
And stuff. So no, man, again, this is what I love about the show is that there are just all these ideas, both visually and in the dialogue, that any DC fan is going to be like, holy shit, they're covering that. That's fantastic. And like you said too, this great juxtaposition of Bane, who is this incredible physical threat to Batman with the venom and everything. And because of Tom Hardy's voice and what you guys have him do has really become this great comic character. It's fantastic, man.
Yeah, I mean, you start to see immediately in episode 2 that Bane is like the butt of the jokes of all the members of the Legion of Doom. He's like their whipping boy, even though he could just crush all of them if he wanted to. But he's like this sensitive soul. He kind of means well, but obviously his tactics are inhumane. But we just like for everything from the B story became just like a runner of like how much shit can the Joker and the rest of his like Legion of Doom like cronies give, how much shit can they shovel onto Bane. And so we have this moment of Joker complaining about like his food and just taking Bane's, but then Bane thinks they're going to swap, but Joker's going to hang on to his too, and Bane's just like he's not going to like blow up at him, so he's just it's that thing of like he's stuck and just like fumfering. He's like, well, then what are we even doing? And it's just that stuff is what James Adomian, one of the millions of things that James Adomian does really well is just that ability to kind of like improv fumfering. Bane quickly became kind of a favorite in the writer's room, and so part of the task of re-envisioning episode 2 when we were doing it was putting more Bane into the episode.
That's awesome. And Kite Man makes his entrance and stuff. Now, when you guys are writing this, because again, I'll refer to the comics, Tom King loves the idea of Kite Man. and he's kind of been he was his running joke during his run. Were you aware of that, or was that just independently? Okay, because I just, again, this is the great thing about Batman's rogues galleries. You get the really serious killer villains, and then you also get the ridiculous villains like the Kite Man.
Yeah, Tom gave, it was his run that he did with Kite Man with the War of Jokes and Riddles and the interlude stories. I mean, it was funny, but it was also, man, it was like really tragic. I think, Tom does that, walks that line very well, something he does super well. And we love the idea of, we had part of what the backstory that Tom had given Kite Man with, his son and the tragic end with his son. And we didn't link them to the Joker, but we had that in episode 2 that Kite Man had a dead son. And at one point he used that for like sympathy points with Ivy when he was just trying to have sex with Ivy. And we were like, this is like unforgivable, right? Like we cannot do this. Like Kite Man starts out as, he's a douche, but like he's kind of a harmless douche, and we don't think that he would like use the death of a loved one for sympathy points to try and get laid. So we pulled that out. And so, like, as far as anyone knows, and who watches the show, Kite Man doesn't have a son, doesn't have a tragic story that had happened to his loved one. So, we can kind of take it now wherever we want moving forward. But yeah, that was kind of absolutely, Kite Man was inspired by Tom King's run, and he brought Kite Man back into the public consciousness, and yeah, I mean, I used a lot of pages from that run in pitching Kite Man and what I liked about Kite Man to the writers. Obviously the hell yeah thing, as his catchphrase, Tom, popularized that, and we were like, well, we have to cannibalize that for the show. And it sort of, the origins that Tom gave to that phrase are so tragic, but in ours it's just like, it's this like douchey frat guy thing that this guy spouts out. So and he absolutely, that character in episode 2 starts out as, he's really just kind of a literal and metaphorical tool. He's like, he's a plot device. He's like representative of, these are the male supervillains, if you even want to call him a supervillain, who, just see, these women at this party as, as things, he's objectifying them. He's just using his clout, whatever clout Kite Man has, to hit on them. Ivy is this, she's essentially a deity, right? With her powers and stuff. And yet, here's a guy who, his superpower, as he calls it, is, having a kite. And he thinks that he somehow either equals or even maybe betters than Ivy, which is just objectively incorrect. But as we kept writing that character, moving forward in the storyline, he takes on a significant role in the show. And I don't think that when we were writing, that's one of those things that we didn't plan out with serialization, and it just kind of took on a life of his own for the first season, at least, was Ivy, what happens with Ivy and Kite Man, which, we don't have to get into the details to spoil anything, since we're just focusing on episode 2, but Matt Oberg voices him. Matt Oberg, hilarious actor, writer. You might know him from, he's just been in a million things. He had this, Fresh Off the Boat was a show that I don't know if he ended up becoming a series regular on that show, but he was like, he heavily recurred on that show. Okay. Recently, he was one of the hosts of the Onion Sports Dome back when that show. He was one of the anchors. It was a very funny Comedy Central show that was sort of a spoof of Sports Center. And Matt was one of the anchors on that. He's been in a million things.
He's great.
And oh my God, there's this, if you ever see the clip of it's a spoof of an Axe body spray executive. It's called Bro Body Douche. The Bro Body Douche episode of 30 Rock, and his scene where he's a marketing executive and that Tina Fey's character Liz Lemon is pitching to do to become the sponsor of TGS. And she's trying to sell him on it, and he's trying to sell her on why this is like a marriage made in heaven. And he's so funny in that, and that like was such an inspiration for the voice of Kite Man as well, at least in the early days before he kind of starts to redeem himself. But yeah, Matt Oberg voices him, and once Matt got into the booth and kind of breathed life into this character, we knew that we wanted to bring him back. So yeah, I mean, this episode is very important in setting up a lot of the recurring characters and series regulars, more so than the pilot even.
Totally agree. And no, he and also of course part of the plot, he releases Ivy's juice, as he calls it, not realizing it's her pheromones and how deadly they are. And again, all the 13-year-old boys trying to make their play for Ivy and stuff. Hey, you want to go to a PG-13 movie? And just those kind of pickup lines, those tweener pickup lines are fantastic, man. And again, these kids that are just like, or even just when Ivy is, kind of humiliated by the Legion of Doom, that she's got to sit at the kids' table, not realizing that, oh, I'm sorry, this is Joshua's best friend's table. What are you doing here? Unless you're that girl that he had his way with back in summer camp that he claims. Funny stuff, man.
We always knew that we wanted to do. I think like the sort of inspiration was just the image of like the kid who's hitting on Ivy, playing it cool, and then he just takes a puff of his inhaler like it's a cigarette and blows the smoke. It just felt like this like Pepe Le Pew move that was just like so in line with like the legacy of like Warner Brothers cartoon characters.
Well, one of my best friends had an inhaler like that when he was a kid. So I mean, that's what I'm saying, man. I'm like, Jesus, this really does like feel like a bar mitzvah that I attended, 40 years ago. That's hilarious, man. This is killing me. It was great. Very, very funny, man. And Wayne Knight is the Penguin.
Wayne Knight is the Penguin. And then, of course, Andy Daly as Two-Face. He gets, a lot more of the spotlight moving forward as well. Raul Coley as Scarecrow.
Cool.
Who we knew from our days writing on iZombie.
Awesome.
Raul was a series regular on iZombie. He played Dr. Ravi on iZombie, and he's such a fanboy, particularly of DC stuff. And we were just kind of shooting the shit with him one day, and he was like, if there's anything I can contribute to, and we were like, what do you think about Scarecrow? And he's like, yep, don't have to think about that. So, and Scarecrow also, has a very significant role in the show moving forward.
Excellent.
Yeah, this is just laying the groundwork.
Well, that's cool. And also, I love Mrs. Cobblepot. And again, this classic kind of, a little adult language going on right now in the children's part. Keep it down, girls. Yes, Mrs. Cobblepot. I mean, it was adorable. That was fantastic, man.
Yeah, that was Nicole Sullivan voicing her. And Nicole was someone that who we had worked with on all the way back on Shit My Dad Says, along with Will Sasso, who voices Maxie Zeus in a later episode.
Yeah, we'll talk about the Zeus episode next. Absolutely, man.
Yeah, but Nicole, when we were trying to figure out who Mrs. Cobblepot was, Nicole's done a ton of voice work. She voices Supergirl on DC Superhero Girls now. Mm-hmm. And she, she's just a super funny comedian, and we kind of went with like the Edie McClurg, sort of, approach to it. I think even visually, Mrs. Cobblepot looks like Edie McClurg.
Totally.
As Principal Rooney's assistant in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. But yeah, that we just needed someone to be like, clearly she's a villain, but she just looks like your favorite aunt who bakes you cookies. So we needed that as kind of a counterpoint to all of the foul language and violence that was going on in the background. And then Joshua Bucks, of course, becomes like there was one point where Joshua bucks, which is this sort of gag currency that the Penguin had printed up for this fake kind of play heist that he planned out for as like an activity for Joshua's bar mitzvah. All these the Joshua bucks, we had like a season runner where Joshua bucks become like Bitcoin, and like it takes on like value, like real value in the real world. And like there was this whole like real heist of like Joshua bucks that was like part of like the later episodes, and then at a certain point it just kind of dropped off, and we were like, well, that's ridiculous. And maybe now it doesn't seem so ridiculous.
That's awesome, man. I know later on there's the one scene where eventually another television show pops up on the run, and you cut to the Penguins watching it, the Cobblepots watching it with Joshua, and I can't even remember, but Joshua's like reacts to what he sees on the screen, and I'm like, look, it's Joshua, he's back, because it's great.
Harley. She ruined his bar mitzvah. Technically, he has not become a man yet.
That's a good point. Absolutely, no, and of course, not only in a bar mitzvah sense, but also in the villain sense, because Harley shames him and kind of, when he's got the Penguin's umbrella gun and ready to shoot Harley, she really kind of talks him out of it and stuff, and points out his immaturity and stuff. And all he really wants is a toy.
That was one of those things, we get asked a lot about, what, given how kind of, blue this show works, what are some of the things that are either longer conversations or that you've been told not to put in the show, or asked politely, please, for the love of God, don't put a finger banging joke in the show. That was one of them. This episode was one of the first ones of like, please, for the love of God, don't put a finger banging joke in the show. We beg you. And we were just like, and let us answer that by begging you back to let us leave it in, and we'll test it. We'll literally, like, we'll make this episode one of the 3 episodes that we test in front of a focus group.
Okay.
And so, to their credit, Warner Brothers, or to their ultimate demise, Warner Brothers allowed us to leave it in for the animatic stage. We tested the animatic, and people thought it was hilarious. It was that was one of it was such a seminal point in the show, because it was one of those things where it alleviated, I think, a lot of people's the test results, right? The focus group testing, market research results of a couple of these episodes ended up testing through the roof, and like the people literally from the third party market research company that was essentially facilitating all of these tests, they, like, in the middle of this, they were like, I've never seen a reaction to a show like this. Like, I've never seen something this positive, like, across the board. And that was like this giant, it was validation for what we were trying to do, when we didn't know if it was going to work. It could have gone horribly wrong.
Sure.
It could have easily gone horribly wrong. We didn't know. Nobody knows until you test it. And that's why people, why studios continue to rely on testing, is that, there is inherent value in it. I don't think that a show that tests highly doesn't necessarily mean, we've had shows test highly before and then they fail miserably on the air. It's not always an indicator of how a show is going to do, but it does tell you valuable information and helps you get a show on the air. This was always going to be on the air in the case of Harley, but it was a huge sigh of relief, a huge weight off of our shoulders to hear that, these different groups of, sort of on the spectrum of like hardcore DC fans to like casual fans, completely embraced these weird kind of like offbeat interpretations of these classic characters. And so, the finger banging joke got like a lot of laughs, and it was this huge sigh of relief. And then they let us keep it in because it was, it was well received. And I mean, that's still like one of those jokes where I watch it. I'll be like sitting in like an ADR spotting session, which is like when you just go, you as a producer, you sit down with your producer and your ADR, technician, and and our ADR spotting person was like, Kelly, I love her, but she's like, I look at her like, I don't want to offend you in any way.
Sure.
And, like, that joke, every time that joke would play in like the ADR spotting session, I would just like bury my face in my hands, because you could kind of see like over Kelly's shoulder that she was just like like biting her tongue. Like, this is so vile.
That's hilarious. Well, but it's real. As again, I mean, I remember my tween years, and it was, oh man, I had my hand under her shirt. Really? Wow. And this is the 21st century version of that. I mean, generations and stuff. Oh man, you made it to second base. God only knows what second and third base are. I don't think I want to know as an adult man. But but again, it's real. I mean, that is the beauty of good comedy, is it's real. And again, I can appreciate people being shocked, but that's great that they let you do it. It's good that the focus groups, I can only imagine, what did we all think about the finger banging comment? Raise your hand if that was okay. Oh, it's a whole full house. Okay, moving on. I could see Edie McClurg, handling that focus group. That's
absolutely
outstanding, man. And again, additional dialogue recording, I believe, for people who don't know ADR, correct?
Yeah.
Yes. So, I can, again, everyone is sensitive to sensibilities. This is an R-rated comedy. It should be an R-rated comedy. That's excellent. So I'm really glad that you won that debate. So it's, as far as I'm concerned, you've got the word balloon seal of approval on the scene. I think that's excellent. So really, again, and also I love how Ivy warms up to Kite Man and kind of appreciates him. Hey, something as goofy as you are, it is kind of cool flying over the city from his vantage point. And also I love how he's checking the weather to make sure, because as any kite flyer would, I don't know, there might be storms. Maybe it isn't good for me to be. Oh no, we're okay. We can go.
A lot of qualifiers with Kite Man's job, like whether or not he can pull his job, pun intended. But yeah, like that was another example of like this episode. Like we didn't have that sort of camaraderie built in at all with Ivy or her, like kind of any mitigating factors. She thought in the initial draft it was like, nah, he's a douche. We end the episode on him being a douche, but then as we kept writing more episodes and finding that Kite Man was, the character that we wanted to strengthen the relationship with Ivy, along with Harley's, but we started leaning more on Kite Man in that way. And we were like, well, there has to be some moment of like slight redemption or some glint in Ivy's eye that like, okay, this guy's a douche, but he's like, ultimately he's harmless. And, oh yeah, like, I kind of get this, like flying above Gotham at night, like, from the sky there's some romance in this. Okay.
Absolutely. And of course, Ivy has to, administer the antidote for her poison. And the poor 13-year-olds are all trees right now. So that was great. And again, man, I'll tell you, it took me back to bar mitzvahs in summer camp and guys getting their first kisses from women, they're girls, and it's like, wow, this is a big deal again. And it's that male. Forgive me, folks, if it's too male of a perspective, but I get it, and it was terrific just watching those kids, and especially the kid that comes back with the little branch. I think I got a little tree left in me. Oh, yeah. We come back for seconds, and yeah, hilarious, man. Very, very funny. Good stuff.
Yeah, that kid is. That kid's something. He's determined. I think that's if memory serves, that's also the inhaler kid.
I believe you're correct. That is the inhaler kid. That's true. Yeah. So we'll reconvene because now Harley has kind of made her stand, and the Legion of Doom kind of turns on the Joker and doesn't follow his. He's kind of in charge, and as Harley points out, why are you guys taking orders from him? He's not. You guys even have powers. This guy's nothing. He's just a comedian, a bad comedian at that. And yeah, it's a great challenge to the Joker's power base. And luckily, he conveniently has to go away because the contractors are screwing up the lair. So he has to go back and supervise the job. So Harley survives another day, and things move on to the next episode.
Yeah, that battle at the end of the episode was such a fun one to write and kind of orchestrate when the Joker's got the gun Ivy's head, and that just that
Yes.
moment too of like we want something that is here's Ivy making a gesture that says she is she took a bullet for Harley.
Well, and also powerful. It's like, hey, don't fuck with me. I've got plants that will chew you up. By all means, try something. And there is that great kind of Western eyeball to eyeball kind of thing where it's like, him thinking, oh, I got the upper hand. And she's like, no, you don't. And it's like, please try something. I am so ready to face you.
Yeah. And then it was this opportunity to show how Harley and Ivy can kind of work in tandem. And we wanted to write this sort of like chain reaction of, they're fighting back to back. Harley's yelling out to Ivy to, throw her a gun. And then she, one of the vines shoots out, grabs Two-Face's gun. Harley shoots Scarecrow's, pressurized tank that he's wearing on his back, which sends him flying. And like we had one of the things that we cut out of that moment was there was more of the crowd getting dosed with Scarecrow's fear toxin.
Sure.
People just running around screaming about things that they're afraid of. And it just kind of like it became too ridiculous because it was sort of like, oh, my face is on fire and oh, I'm covered in bats. And then one guy's just like, oh my God, I ate peanuts. And then it was like too like kind of absurdist in the moment we needed to like keep the actual like dramatic tension going. So every once in a while you run into that where we're like, okay, as much as like this joke is like a slave to the show is a slave to jokes, like we do need some dramatic tension here. So that was one of the times that we had to mitigate that, and we start to do that more in the show as the episodes progress, and because it is serialized and because we are building the relationships that these meaningful relationships as the show goes, we started to kind of mature, I guess, as a writing staff and leave room for those moments. But this was kind of like the first time that you start to see that a little bit as well. I think, at least consciously, we did in the writer's room.
So many shows do need a full season to kind of find their footing. And I have to say again, and I'm not just saying this because you're here and being nice on my part, but honestly, I think you guys really did gel in terms of the direction you wanted to go to pretty fast. So I can appreciate adjustments that likely happened throughout the season. But again, this is only the second episode.
Yeah.
And I think that the tone is there and the right balance of action and humor absolutely are there. So
yeah, I think it's largely a function of animation too, and allowing us to go back and like make these changes, before the episode animatics get shipped out overseas and you get your full color animation back. It was, that is one of the luxuries as a writer, at least in animation, is the ability to like take multiple swings that you can't in live action, because you're committing stuff to film or tape, and it's expensive to go back and do those reshoots versus like getting to essentially do your reshoots in the animatic phase before you ship it.
Well, again, it's my favorite episode of season 1, and you understand the need for henchmen, I think, in the first 2 episodes, and that leads into the 3rd episode, which we will discuss next time. So, as always, man, I appreciate you coming on and chatting about the first season for the people that are just discovering it now on Sci-Fi Channel, and I look forward to our conversation about episode 3.
Thanks, John.
Thanks again for watching another Word Balloon video. We've got plenty more at our channel, Word Balloon. If you enjoyed it, please like it and consider subscribing to the channel. And of course, support me on Patreon, patreon.com/wordballoon. Thanks a lot for watching.